Bishop Academy Books. Presenting The Children's Encyclopedia by Arthur May.
The story of the marvelous plants that cover the earth. What this story tells us. The oldest living things on earth are plants. They cover the earth with the beauty like a truly magic carpet, and they are the very foundations of our lives. We could not live without them, but for the plant kingdom spread over the whole surface of the earth and along the surface and the bottom of the sea, the animal kingdom must perish. The whole world depends for its food upon plants, and the whole world depends therefore upon a secret that the plant has which no man knows. For a plant knows how to take its food from air and water. It takes its supplies as it stands there rooted in the soil, nourishing itself in some mysterious way from the atmosphere direct. As we stand looking at it, a plant is making its own food. No man knows how. Here we shall read of the astonishing wonder of life in the kingdom of plants. How life goes round and round. For a very long time there were no living creatures at all upon the earth. When the earth was too hot to be a home of life, but the crust cooled, depressions were filled with water, and there was a heavy atmosphere of gas. Then the first living creatures made their appearance. Scientists cannot tell us whence they came. What they were like, these firstlings, we do not know. Almost all beginnings are very misty, but it is probably safe to say that they were microscopically small, like the microbes which cause disease. If we can imagine an observer of the earth in the time of the dawn of life, he would not have been able to see the teeming animalcules any more than we can see the tiny specks of bacteria. Another thing that is almost certain is that the first living creatures were neither decided plants nor decided animals. They were, so to speak, hesitating between these two very different lines of life. They were nearer plants in this way, that they were able to feed at a low level on water and carbonic acid gas, carbon dioxide, and salts in the water. They were able in some measure to use the energy of the sunshine to help them to build up carbon compounds from simple materials. The genealogical tree on all living creatures must be thought of as like an ornamental V with little twigs on each half of its fork. To the left we may put the animals and to the right the plants, and it would be useful to make the animal line go much higher than the plant line. Everyone feels that there is a great gulf between a beech tree and the squirrel on its branches, but we are not quite so clear when it comes to distinguishing between a mushroom and a sponge, and some of the old naturalists thought sponges and corals were plants of the sea. Still more difficult is it to be sure whether a living creature with a single cell is a plant or an animal, especially as some simple animals have managed to get hold of the green coloring matter called chlorophyll, which is characteristic of almost all plants. Then, at the foot of our V-shaped tree, there are creatures sometimes called protists, which the botanist and the zoologist both claim. They have not yet taken the decisive step. Long, long ago, then, some simple single-celled creatures manufactured chlorophyll, surrounded themselves with a cell wall of cellulose, now sold in the shops as vegetable parchment paper, and began to build up quantities of sugar, starch, and other carbon compounds. These were the first plants, and they probably lived freely in the sea. The secret of their success was the ability to feed at low chemical level and to use the power of the sunlight in their chemical operations of building up. Their success meant much for future history, for they began to form an atmosphere of free oxygen, and they made carbon compounds sufficient to feed not only themselves but the animal world. The great secret of the animals and what it meant for them. Of course, the animals had their simple beginnings too, and the parting of the ways was when certain creatures, the first animals, became addicted to the habit of not building up their own food but using what simple plants had made. This discovery of ready-made food was the deep secret of animals, and it meant the possibility of great activity, of living adventurously. For food is just like fuel, it is a supply of chemical energy. Plants are like manufacturers of munitions, and animals explode these in the never-ending battle of life. Happily for us, plants are like misers, accumulating much more than they need. Animals are spendthrifts, often living close up to their income. We can understand then why most animals get along comfortably without being green, and why they are nearly all free from the somewhat clogging and embarrassing material called cellulose, which forms the cell walls of plants. Perhaps a plant may be compared to a knight of long ago, boxed in by his suit of armor. The muscles of animals could not do what they do if the wall of each muscle cell were surrounded by a stiff cellulose. It must be remembered that cellulose is chemically next door to wood. The two halves of the V-shaped tree of life diverge farther and farther, but it is not surprising that something of the animal may often be detected in the plant, and something of the plant in the animal. We shall have to return to the animal lurking in the plant, but let us take a few examples in the meantime. The sundew and Venus flytrap and other insect-eating plants have turned the tables on animals. They depend in part on insects for their food and catch them very effectively. Many leaves rise and fall, and many flowers open and close with the growing and waning light of day. Young shoots bend and bow to the different points of the compass. The young rootlet moves in the earthworm's burrow, and the tendril of the pea is extraordinarily sensitive to the touch of a twig, and its tip moves around in little paths as if it were searching. It is easy to see the movements of the stamens of the rock rose or the closing of the stigma of the musk. All plants are sensitive in some measure, and Sir J.C. Bose, the great botanist of India, proved that a tree may answer back to a passing cloud. Many plants, if not all, have some capacity for movement, and there is a telegraph plant in the Ganges basin called Desmodium, whose leaves are always moving a little. When the Venus flytrap in the Carolina swamp shuts the two halves of its rat trap-like leaf and catches a fly, there is an electrical change similar to that which occurs when we contract our muscles in shutting our hands. There is no doubt that the animal lurks in the plant. Many animals, like sponges, zoophytes, and corals, have relapsed into a plant-like sluggishness. Except when they are very young, they are fixed. Many of them are much given to branching, often in a very tree-like way. In the sea squirts there is an abundant cellulose in the enveloping coat, a characteristic vegetable substance in the most sluggish part of a very sluggish animal. A number of sluggish animals resemble plants in accumulating quantities of stored material, which may be utilized in hard times or serve as a legacy for the young ones. Not a few animals have a very plant-like power of partially dying down when outside conditions are unfriendly, and some types form resting germs which last through the hard times of winter, as the seeds of many plants do. One must not make too much of green animals, for most green animals, like the green freshwater sponge, or the green freshwater hydra, or green sea anemones and corals, owe their green color to tiny partner plants which live inside some of their cells. There seem to be just a few cases where the animal has chlorophyll belonging to itself. In many cases, in some starfishes and worms, some lizards and birds, the green color has nothing at all to do with the green color of plants. So far as complexity of structure and life history goes, the whole kingdom of many-celled plants may be compared simply to the zoophytes and corals among animals. They are all within a comparatively narrow range. But what diversity there is between toadstool and oak tree, lichen on the hilltop and the fields of golden wheat, between the beautifully colored seaweeds and the flowers of the meadow. Or if we take a single class like ferns, what a multitude of kinds there are, each itself and no other. And we get the same impression of endless form changes when we study a single order of flowering plants, say the rose order. All the members have a great deal in common. They are near relations, yet how different at first sight seem such plants as the rose, strawberry, apple, tormental, and salad burnet. Who would think at first sight that the columbine, monkshood, and buttercup belong to the same order of ranunculuses? And besides variety of form, there is variety of habitat. Where is there any plantless place, except in the darkness of the deepest sea? There may be red snow due to a very simple plant on a floating iceberg. There are some simple plants in hot springs. There are alpines above the snow line on the mountains. There are molds glistening under the underground passages in mines. There is a partner fungus spreading through the heather plant, even into the flower, and doctors sometimes speak of the flora of a man's food canal.